And what you were saying about pedals, I thought was interesting because I like pedals, but you are right. You can. There's a whole song in like a pedal.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, there's a whole song in a pedal, or sometimes there's a whole song in just a thing. Like I always get, my wife quite often buys me a musical instrument for Christmas or birthday.
Nice.
And there's like
she's a keeper.
She's great. But there's you can get a whole song out of a thing. You know, like an omnichord or I've got like an old auto harp or something like that. And it's great. But then often I'll get one song out of something and then be like, oh, I'll put that to the side there. I'll come back to that at some point. And I'm like, and never do. So I'm like hoarding this stuff.
Yeah. I find that like sometimes I'll play a pedal and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to it like 5 years later and be like, oh, what does that sound like?
Yeah.
And I'll plug it in and be like, wow, it sounds amazing. I can't believe I didn't like this pedal when I bought it.
I recently bought a chorus pedal and I've always said they're illegal. I always said they're illegal, which is weird because all my love bands like The Cure and things like that, and they've always used those things. Yeah, and another guitarist I play with as well, he's like said you told me those were illegal like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, they still might be actually.
So when you were a kid, I guess chorus pedals were kind of in fashion a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, must have been.
Yeah.
Like, The Cure and people like that would always use them.
What was your what were the bands you listened to growing up?
Well, it would have been The Cure. And it would have been and then sort of Dinosaur Jr. and stuff like that. And also the stuff that was sort of pre-grunge as well, like sort of I was listening to something the other day that cropped up on my Spotify, like when things crop up because they started working out who you might be. Mm-hmm. There's bands like the Senseless Things and Ned's Atomic Dustbin and things like that, these sort of noisy bands that were somewhere between the time frame of I guess grunge and Britpop, or maybe just before both. And then there was like the Thames Valley scene, the sort of Slow Dive and Ride and all those bands, and that's just the indie, the Smiths and those sorts of bands.
Because I think even like Nirvana was using quite a lot of chorus pedals.
They were,
and stuff, weren't
Kurt
they?
Cobain, they're classically on that. What's the big ding 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 ding?
Come As You Are. Yeah.
That's drenched in it, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, I think a lot of that stuff is, which is funny, isn't it? Because you think about it, because a chorus pedal, it kind of makes everything out of tune.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
When I first got a chorus pedal as a kid, I always pressed it during the chorus of the song, because I didn't know what it did.
Right.
I thought it was what you're meant to use in the chorus.
Not a bad shout. I suppose it's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird when you think about what you were listening to, because I always loved pop music as well when I was a kid, like pop. I think the first artist I went to see was Howard Jones, who did he was like a sort of keyboard wizard and essentially a sort of weird, actually quite an odd pop star. Because if you listen to his lyrical content, it wasn't mainstream really. Mm-hmm. But it's strange.
Yeah. So if we start from the beginning of this is your life. This is from the beginning of your life. So you told me you grew up in Freeland.
Yeah.
I've even researched you. Right?
Have you googled?
I've googled you. Yeah.
There's
most stuff I already knew about you.
There's a lot of stuff that's not true on there.
Is there?
Yeah.
Because I think lots of people might know you from your band Medal.
Yeah.
Which was the Daisies beforehand, was that?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, kind of. There's an extra member and a different sound. Mm-hmm.
Morphed into.
Yeah, I can tell you about why that happened.
Yeah, actually, should we start from the beginning? So you grew up. I might miss some cool stuff out. So you grew up in Freeland, which is just down the road from where we are
across the fields.
And how did you get into music?
Yeah, so I was actually weird. I think I was just like a pretty regular kid into football and into riding your bike and hanging out in the woods and stuff like lots of people are 10, 11, 12. Then I wasn't really interested in music at all, really, apart from listening to stuff. I like to listen to music, but I think I went to see my cousin at the time. He was an older cousin. He joined like a covers band in Ensham, and there was a youth centre there, Ensham Youth Centre, and they had a brilliant youth leader called Nick Luxmore, and he was really about getting all these kids to just be creative and mess about. And we were just kids who went to this youth club and used to play pool and sneak a beer in there and have a cigarette and eat some chocolate and just be like horrible lads. Just horrible blokes. Classic horrible like village types.
Yeah.
Not saying village people are horrible, just we were.
I would associate those kids with doing wheelies on their
we'd be doing wheelies on our bikes
yeah.
and stuff and being told by older people to clear off from the shops, near the shops.
Yeah.
And it's just because we didn't really know what we wanted to do or what we could do, really, probably. Anyway, he came along and he started this thing, this youth centre thing, and he decided he was going to put gigs on. So he was like, I don't know who puts what bands there are in the village. So he put a local covers band on. And my cousin was the singer, and we went to watch. And the youth club leader it was properly in like, I think Margaret Thatcher had just got in again, and he was a proper like Labour guy, and he was really upset by this. So he did a support act where he went on stage and just sang like this protest song on his own, unaccompanied, and all the kids were like, "Get off, you rubbish!" And he like he took it, but he like, and I later found out why he did that. He said he said that he did it because he wanted to show everyone that he wanted to make a complete arse of himself and show everyone that you could do it no matter how bad you were.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he did that, and then the band came on and they played the stuff, and it was like Johnny Be Good and all that stuff. And I just remember thinking, and all the kids were like on the tables and like dancing and clapping and applauding, and I remember just thinking, "God, this looks good. This looks really fun. It's really exciting." So I went home and just got my dad's old Spanish guitar and just start trying to play it. Just immediately. I think I got like a Russ Shipton's Song a Day book or something. And it like taught you how to play Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan, which was like A, or whatever it was.
And how did you learn? How did someone teach you to tune it or anything?
That was the thing, because in those days you didn't have tuners, did you? So,
no.
And this didn't even have any guitar pegs. I had to have a pair of pliers to tune the broken guitar tuning pegs. And I think I had a little floppy vinyl disc that came with this guitar book that you would play the note and you'd have to endlessly try and tune it.
Yeah.
And it was painful. But then you'd have to sort of physically move my fingers to change between the chords. Really, really not in any way a natural musician. Like, you sometimes see people who pick it up and they'll be like, "Oh, they can't change between chords." I've taught a few people and they'll be like, "Oh, they're moving around." I was just like absolutely laborious, like physically moving my fingers between chords, just trying to like slowly move around.
But you stuck with it.
I think I just really liked it.
Yeah.
I think it must have been at that age when your brain sticks into it. And I would play songs from that book, and I'd play like Leaving on a Jet Plane and things. After not ever hearing it, I remember playing it to my dad, and it's quite a punky version. Leaving on a jet plane, don't know. And he went, "Have you ever heard this song?" I was like, "No." He was like, "It's not like that at all."
You just making it up in your head as you went along.
No, I was playing it, but it was like same chords and same lyrics, and I guess the same melody, but like a bit faster and a bit more urgent. He was like, "Yeah, it doesn't sound like that." So I just started playing guitar, and then I realised I'm learning other people's songs
and singing as well.
And singing, but only because that's how you learn guitar, isn't it? We just sort of sing a song and play it. Yeah. And then I wasn't particularly good, and lots of my friends started playing guitar at the same time, and they were brilliant, some fantastic guitarists, like properly, like they knew the scales and all the chords and how to whittle around. And
did any of them go on to be in local bands as well?
There was a guy called Ollie Wilcox who was a really good guitarist. He was in a band called Fuzzgun in the early 90s, who were a good band actually, really good band. There's a couple of there's some really good musicians. They stuck me on bass because in those days playing bass was like the equivalent. If you were rubbish at football, you had to go in goal.
Yeah.
Which, as I'm talking to a bass player, that's really, really insulting. I know that's no longer the case, but that was what young boys used to think. Well, you're rubbish, you can go on bass.
Yeah.
You only need one finger.
Yeah.
So I was sort of relegated to bass.
Well, I think that's what's kind of good about bass in a way, is that you can start playing it quite quickly.
Yeah.
And it's immediately like fun.
Yeah. Well, Sid Vicious played bass, didn't he? Well, not.
Famously posed playing bass. I don't think he played it on the records at all.
No, I don't think so.
Played out by
or in the gigs either, I don't think.
I have seen some footage of them, and they're like, he is on stage and he is sort of playing the bass.
Hitting it, yeah.
But it's more like when he goes for one string, it's like all of them.
Yeah.
But he does look cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps more important.
Yeah, I think in that case, yeah. No, so I was in a covers band with them called. It was like a school band. We called My Grand's Jack Russell, and we played the youth centre loads and really enjoyed it. And that was where we'd go practice there and then play there and just work on covers. But I would always be like, should we try some? I'd keep writing songs. I kept saying, should we try like one of these? Because they were like, oh, we're a blues band now. I was like, okay, should we write? I've written this blues song. Do you want to have a go? And I'd record it on a cassette player. They go, no. And eventually I just thought, I'm going to start my own band and start writing songs. Just because I'd quite liked writing songs, and also because I was such a bad player of other people's songs. If you wrote your own, you could sort of get away with it.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Like some people, like I've got friends who are just playing covers bands and they're really happy with that.
Yeah.
It's not something that I enjoy really very much, especially compared to playing my own music. I don't know if you found that, like, I find playing original music so much more satisfying than other people playing other people's music. Yeah,
I like writing a song. I like the process of writing a song, and then fleshing out how that song, we can present that song, how it can be, you know, we could slow it down, we could speed it up, how do we dress it, do we make it, you know, do we do it with synths, or do we do it with guitars, what do we do?
Yeah,
I like that process. Or working with a band in a room really immediately and just going, what happens if we do this, and everyone's just changing stuff, and you can try stuff out really quickly. That's really exciting. And then getting it through to the recorded process and going, there it is. It's pretty much, I didn't expect that, or I was something like I expected. It's amazing. Because
a lot of, I was thinking about this the other day, like, just from the point of writing a song, getting it to the point where you've finished it and recording it.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
I mean, even, let alone writing the song and then rehearsing it with the band and then trying to figure out what the best arrangement is, everyone coming with their parts, and then recording it and then mixing it and then mastering it and then releasing it. Like, one song can take you like a year to actually,
it can do,
when people actually hear it.
Yeah. No, it's strange. I used to love that writing process. And then the first thing I did was, one of the early things that made me really fall in love with the process was I got one of those little Tascam 4-track recorders, little tape recorders, and a mic. And I would people would be like, "Oh, you come out this weekend?" I'd be like, "No, I'm actually gonna. My parents are away, so I'm just gonna stay in and make music all night, all weekend, and like write these stupid little mini albums on a cassette that would, never got anywhere, never made it anywhere."
Could you overdub 4 tracks?
Yeah, but you could bounce them down as well.
Right. Okay.
So you could do 3 tracks, then bounce that down to 1, and then keep doing that.
Yeah.
And bouncing them down. And so you could just layering sounds was like, oh my God, you can just spend ages doing this. And it might just be like a toy keyboard and a hand clap or a shaker and a guitar, but it was still like layering and making.
You have to commit to the process then as well, don't you?
Yeah, it was really, really cool and really immediate. Really, really immediate. There's no looking at was that in time? Was that? It's just like, this feels alright.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really good.
We take it for granted now, probably.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then you'd be able to, some songs you'd write on a 4-track, then you could take it to the band and go, look, I've got this idea, that's the drum beat, that's something like the bass line, that's the guitar, and then it'd be like, oh, right. And then immediately they'd get your idea much quicker.
So what was your first band called when you started writing music?
It was the Daisies, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Daisies. And that was 4 people from the same school that I went to in Bartholomew. They were like a couple of years above me. And but I think at that point it was just when it must have been like the baggy scene was like, that was like the prevalent sort of, you'd had the sort of Manchester thing, like Stone Roses and
the
Charlatans and things like that.
Yeah.
And
the northern, that thing.
Yeah, that thing. and there was a lot of, which was quite an interesting time actually, because there's lots of, and they were a lot of those musicians were like not particularly awesome like players, but they had like a sound and a swagger to them. Perhaps it's still quite DIY in its way, and it was like, and then I remember thinking, I wrote a few songs. I wrote something that was similar to like a Charlatans tune, like that sort of feel. I remember saying to someone, we could do this. We should have a go at this. And I just went around convincing some friends. I remember convincing a mate of mine, Dan, to play bass. He said, I can't really play guitar or bass. I said, that'd be alright, it'd be fine. And we just got in a room and played. I mean, our drummer Lemmy was into he was into like loads of music. He went to his bedroom and it was like lined with vinyl. Like he had all these shelves built. It was just covered in vinyl. And you go and call for him, because that's what you did in those days, wasn't it? And he would be like he'd be sat there air drumming with his like a hairbrush, because he'd always have this crazy crimped hair, and he'd be like air drumming to this sort of glam rock or hip hop or like loads of stuff, anything, didn't matter, but it was always really loud.
So you used to drum along to his own vinyls?
Yeah, so he'd listen to records and just sort of like and spin things. But he'd never play the drums. But he'd sit there sort of like tapping.
You're just
around.
miming drums. Just have a drum kit.
No kit, nothing, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so we said to him, "Oh, who's going to play drums?" And we were like, "Oh, we'll get Lemmy to play drums. He likes music." I mean, this is how like shambolic it was. And he was like, and we were like, "Well, he hasn't got a drum kit." So not only is he hasn't got a drum kit, he doesn't even play drums. But and there's a guy selling a drum kit in the local paper, and we went to round to his house, and in the garage, he had this old like Pearl Export, but it was like different bits of Pearl Exports and some just rubbish. And we were going, go on, and then just see if that works. And he just sat down, and he sort of like moved a few things, and he just played the drums, like just played the drums in this guy's garage.
No,
like,
he's never played drums before.
No, but he listened to so much music, and he'd sort of like, I don't know, he must have like watched drummers.
I guess so, yeah.
But we never really sort of, and he just played the drums, and he just played them. And we were like, oh, that's right. We'll have the kit, and it was like, I think it was like 20 quid for the kit. It was a lot of money for us, but it was like, Lem's got a drum kit, we've got guitars and amps. Let's go and rehearse and write songs. It's insane.
Yeah,
it was really, really nice.
And it's nice when you're a kid as well. There's no barriers.
Yeah,
like it doesn't. Not being able to do something isn't a barrier.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when you become an adult, when someone says to you, "Oh, can you do this thing?" and you don't know how to do it, I think I sometimes myself, I go, "No, I can't. I don't know how to do that."
Yeah.
Whereas when you're a kid, it's like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that, but I'll just do it anyway."
Yeah. Or I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
We just that was it. We were like, we're going to write some songs and then we're going to release them. And we'll probably be on top of the pops with those guys, I imagine.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. Oh yeah. You write songs, can you? Probably. Yeah, I can probably be fine.
Yeah. So you guys got to get rehearsed at school?
We rehearsed in like a local, there was like a room that the youth centre sorted out for us. It was like an old terrapin building within the school grounds. We would rehearse there like twice a week, and we wrote loads of songs. And then we started like, we did a gig, our first gig in Oxford we'd ever did. By this time we'd like, the sound had sort of developed. We weren't a baggy Manchester thing. We were, I guess it was like more. It was grungier, sort of power pop thing, but it also had like touches of like The Cure and sort of those sort of big epic sort of intros and stuff. But it was still sort of a noisy thing. And we got a gig in Oxford in the old fire station. I remember played sort of in Hayley Rugby Club or something, and Ancient Youth Club, and like the Red Lion in here, and just sort of as kids. And we got a gig in Oxford, and we're like, oh my god, we got a gig in Oxford, this is so exciting. So we went and played a gig in the old fire station. And the guy who was doing the sound engineering was a guy called Nick Morbath, who went on to own the Zodiac. And
which is now the O2 Academy.
Yeah, it's now the O2, yeah.
For those people who don't know.
Yeah, and he was like doing the sound, and we played this gig, and he came back and he went, that was excellent, lads, that was really good. You should come to my studio. He also owned Cold Room Studios,
right? Yeah, which is now
a Glasshouse Studios. Yeah, he said, come out to his studio and have a little play, and maybe I can manage you. And we're like, brilliant! We've just done a gig in Oxford. Now we've got a manager who's got a studio, and he was like, come over. And he said, yeah, you can rehearse for free, but you've got to do it at 11 o'clock at night when everyone else has finished.
Right.
So we'd rehearse all night in this little terrapin in school, and then after that we'd go to the pub for half an hour or an hour or so, and then wait for everyone to finish rehearsing this rehearsal studio, then go there for the rest of the night, and then we'd sort of pull an all-nighter there. So we were rehearsing the shit out of stuff, like really hard, and because we weren't naturally talented, so we just rehearsed and got really good. Well, what you say, I hate the expression, got really tight, but we were really good in that way, you know.
I think when you're a kid, you got the time to do that as well.
Yeah, you? And you haven't got to get up for work.
No, you haven't got to get up for work. I remember watching this quote from when Nirvana were looking for a new drummer. They said, we need someone who can join the band, who can rehearse with us all the time, like every day.
Yeah.
We need to be rehearsing. And I remember being in my first band was from a couple of boys who lived in the same village as me, and we'd go and rehearse in the guitarist's garage, like every day, and we'd play, I don't know, like Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix for like 4 hours straight without stopping, just jamming and jamming and jamming and jamming and jamming. And I don't remember ever getting bored of it. No. Like, I don't remember. I imagine you didn't get bored in rehearsals.
No, because something happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's something that happens to your brain at that age as well, where you suddenly go, they call it like, I guess like athletes call it being in the zone and that, don't they? When you just like get into it and you're just like, I'm doing this, and then time just goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it just got really good, and then I think someone even reviewed the first gig we'd done and said, "Oh, these boys are really good." And we were like, "Oh my god, we're really good."
Was there a music magazine back then in Oxford?
Yeah, it was called Curfew magazine, which is now Night Shift.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, so then Nick said, "Come and record this. Come and record some songs for a little tape." We used to release tapes in those days, and we went and recorded four songs, and sold them. And you sell them in record shops.
So this was at Cold Room Studios. That was where you first recorded.
No, it was that was just rehearsal space then, and,
right,
and like an actual pick your own fruit farm.
Oh yes, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was only like 2 rooms.
Yeah,
and a fruit farm. But
I feel like they did get into recording later.
Yeah, quite a bit later.
Right.
But we went to a place called Under the Bed Studios, which was a place in Jericho somewhere, which is a guy literally had a bunk bed on stilts and a mixing desk under it, and that was his control room in his bedroom, and then downstairs in the living room was like the live room. Wow. And we recorded like 4 songs in there.
Yeah. And what did you record to?
Tape, proper tape. Like,
yeah.
And then we did loads of stuff to tape. Then we just played it as we'd rehearsed it, and we were quite well rehearsed, and it sounded fine. All in the same room? Did you do everything? Yeah, live? Everything. Vocals, everything. Right? I think we overdubbed the vocals, but everything else we put down just live. Mm-hmm. There might have been a couple of guitar overdubs as well. That thing you do now, where you still do it the same way. I quite often do it the same way. You play live and then just redo bits that are rubbish. Yeah. And hope you've got it vaguely right. But yeah, it was good, really good, really exciting. And then did more of that. Did 3 or 4 demo tapes, writing lots of songs, rehearsing them, and and lots of people started coming to our gigs, and putting some cassettes out and having fun in around Oxford, and it was all good. And then I think we went at one point in the Daisies, we'd written a song called Aeroplane Day and stuff like that, and we were like, okay, this time we'll get some money together, and we'll go to a nicer studio and we'll record it, and we'll make a CD. CDs were like it's a CD. Now people be like, I'm not want to make a CD at all. It's horrible. People don't even want to buy them now, do they? Yeah, but we were going to make because it was all cassettes. Yeah. And then I think vinyls were still probably too expensive in those days. I'm not sure. Not sure why they never did a vinyl. Don't know. Anyway, we were going to go to so we booked a weekend at Courtyard Studios in Sutton Courtenay, where Chris Hufford, Radiohead's manager, it was his studio, and he'd recorded. I'm not sure if Radiohead recorded bits of Pablo Honey there, or not. Maybe they had. Slow Divers certainly recorded their first album there, I think, and he'd produced it. So we'll do a weekend with him. We'll do a similar thing. We'll do like 2 days, 4 songs, put it on a CD. But we'll try and make it a little bit better than the other stuff. Now, as someone who records bands, I'm thinking when someone says we're going to come in and do 4 days, 4 songs in 2 days, I'm like, oh, should we do it? We could spend a bit longer. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, so we smashed that, and he was like, and we were recording that with him, and as we were chatting to him, he said, "What are you going to do this?" And we said, "Oh, we're going to record this. We're going to make these CDs. We're going to send them to American college stations, radio stations, and then they'll play them loads, and then we'll go out there and tour, and we'll probably get a record deal in America." Where did that idea hatch from? I think there was the college radio scene was big in those days. I guess it still is, but it was like certainly something that we were like, that's where we're going to go and do it, because this is sort of, I guess our sound was. It was a bit like more like sort of swerve drivery. It sort of developed into that sort of noisier, perhaps a little bit shoegaze, but a little bit sort of noisy as well. Sort of almost pre-grunge stuff. Yeah, we just thought that was our plan, and he was like, and we'd done like car boot sales to raise the money to go to the studio and things like that. Car boot sales. Yeah, we just like gone out and like sold tat to raise the money for the studio. Wow. And then we went there, and he said, "What are you doing?" We told him what we're doing. And then I didn't have any money to pay him the day we finished. The next day I went back to collect the DAT tape, or whatever, and paid him. And he was like, "Oh, you should have a chat about this idea. It's actually not. It's not that outlandish, really. It's not a bad idea." And then we started talking to him about. He just started being more of a presence and helping us a little bit. And then we recorded. We never signed anything with him. But he would be really, him and Bryce, who were Radiohead and Supergrass's manager, were like, "Oh, well, come to the studio and do some more demos and record some more stuff. And we ended up recording an album with Chris Hufford, and then we had a little single release in California, and we went and toured California for a couple of weeks.
What was that like? 'Cause did you go straight from playing local gigs to then playing?
Yeah, we'd started doing, when they got involved, we started doing like what they call the toilet tour of the UK. We'd started doing that a little bit on our own anyway at this point.
Yeah.
And just booking gigs here and there. And then I think once they were involved, we were carrying on doing gigs around the country, sort of Leicester Princess Charlotte and the Holodelphi and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And then and then we'd gone out to California, literally with just our guitars, and we picked up some backline out there, and just played lots of shows out there, and they just released this little 7-inch vinyl, just 2 tracks. Was
that a bit mind blowing? Going out there,
it was kind of. No, it was really exciting. It was like, oh, that's California, and it was only up and down up and down California for a few weeks. But the gigs were similar to what we were doing at home as well, those sort of size. So it wasn't like any sort of step up in that way. It was just exciting, and it was like America, and that was the plan. We'd write these songs, release them in America. And
it's a pretty ballsy plan, isn't it? Like, because most English bands go to Europe.
Yeah.
That's what they do. But you guys kind of went, Yeah,
but I don't know how that happened. That was just
just chance.
Well, once Chris and Bryce were involved, that obviously helped a lot, because they had Radiohead and Supergrass were just starting to break at that point. I think maybe they weren't. They were still bubbling under.
Okay.
And they obviously, and it is really annoying, but an awful lot of what happens in the music industry is who you know, regardless of like how good you are. I mean, we could play, certainly, and the songs were pretty good, but it certainly helped having some people like that involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any of that would have. I don't think any of it would have happened without their involvement.
So those bands, Radiohead and Supergrass, they were about, but they weren't doing a lot.
So Radiohead were probably, when we first hooked up with. The first time we went in and met Chris, I think Radiohead were probably still on a Friday, and Supergrass were probably they were the Jennifers before they were Supergrass. They might have just been ending as the Jennifers and turning into Supergrass. I mean, when Radiohead were clearly, like, even as on a Friday, were clearly like, could we played lots. They'd always play all the gigs around town. They were clearly like going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And the Jennifers were an amazing band anyway. Gaz always had the swagger, and Danny always had it. And then when they turned into Supergrass, they got Mickey in, and then they became a 3-piece. And they were just really, the first Supergrass gig I saw, it was just like it was packed and everyone knew.
Really?
Like, it was like one of those things like, oh, this is happening. They're playing Caught by the Fuzz and all those classics that we know now, and it was like, whoa, in the back of a room of a pub.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think it's harder to get people out to go to gigs now. But I think people forget that if you do go and watch an unsigned band, you might see
a real corker.
Yeah, you might go and see a band that's like, going to turn into another huge band.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing about the Supergrass, because they were the Jennifers were really good. I mean, the Jennifers they were playing lots of great shows, and they had a really big following in Oxford, and they were still doing loads of gigs around the UK. But when they switched, and they obviously just thought, they obviously just wrote a whole bunch of songs that were just sort of really direct and really punchy, and that was just amazing. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it's quite exciting times.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's nice to be in a scene, doesn't it? Yeah. Did it feel like a scene at the time?
I do remember that there was lots of. I mean, there were always loads of bands that were hanging about and playing, and it did feel like a scene. Yeah, it felt like. But I still go to gigs now, because people sort of my age go, oh, it's not the same as it was. It was a scene back in those days, and I think obviously the internet makes it less insular and less scenic, because people are getting influences from all over the place. But I went to who was I watching? I was watching like Easter Island Statues playing with Self Help or something. It was I think 3 or 4 like sort of noisier indie sort of crunchy bands from Oxford. I don't know how to describe them. And they were all at the Jericho Tavern. We used to always play at Jericho. Jericho was like a proper, really good venue in those days. Everyone went through there, and I went to watch them, and it felt just exactly like when I was a kid doing that as well. And everyone, all the other bands would be in the crowd watching you, jumping off the stage, and you just all swap, and you'd have a few beers, and it'd just be like. So I think it still exists, and that scene.
Yeah.
Everyone's supporting each other or bitching about each other or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But it's still like they're all making music still.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think Oxford's good for that. I definitely know. I've got friends from other parts of the country. I try and explain that Oxford's quite good for music, and they're like, "Is it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's really good." But like, I mean, I think since we've had a few venues close, it's a bit harder now.
It is.
But there's definitely something about Oxford that just makes it good for music. I'm not quite sure what it is.
There is, yeah. I think there are promoters that still want to put stuff on.
Yeah. And regardless of the fact that those promoters are really into the music.
Yeah.
And regardless of the fact that they're probably not going to make any money out of it,
yeah.
they're just doing it because they love doing it.
Yeah.
Think about like Osprey's always putting on gigs. Penny at the Haven Club, she's always putting on gigs at the Bullingdon.
Yeah.
It's like they just love it. They just want to put on gigs and they want to be around.
And you've got the Divine Schism lot as well. Aidan and those guys. They put on some really cool shows, but they're like you say, and sometimes he knows he's not going to get anything on a show.
Yeah.
Sometimes he might break even, but they're putting on stuff that they love, and they also put on stuff like from around the world that they love, which is really cool. You'll get these like cool little bands, international bands, and then you might have a couple of local supports on there.
Yeah,
which is how it's always been. You know,
yeah.
That's how it was always. When you would in the old days at Jericho, you'd support a decent touring band, and it was like really exciting.
Yeah,
you know, like the Verve and Slowdive and that would all play at the Jericho Tavern.
Yeah.
And if you got like one of those supports, it was like, that's cool, isn't it? It's going to be really packed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a nice. It's almost like the natural order of things, right?
Yeah.
Is that the bigger bands help the smaller bands,
and
they give them a step up, and I know Jake from who's does a lot of promoting at the O2. He's trying to do that now with his promotions and UView Promotions.
Yeah, I saw
set
that.
up a little Facebook group, and people can apply to like if you want to be a support band for this band. And I think it's really cool because I think that's coming back in now, that whole thing, because for a while it kind of disappeared, that idea of the little bands supporting the big bands, and then the little bands become the big bands.
Yeah,
and, you know,
often I think at that sort of when it goes up venue size, often the bigger band has a tour support anyway.
Yeah. But
when it's those smaller sort of bully sizes, you can be a bit more flexible.
I think the really big bands actually they do this buy-on thing now.
Yes, right.
Which I find is like, it's totally weird. I get why they do it.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to make money out of when your crew gets bigger. It's harder to make money out of it.
Yeah.
There's a band that I wouldn't say who, but it was a band that we supported a while ago, and they're sort of they were like 90s rap metal band, and they were doing a buy-on thing.
Yeah.
But I did get it because although the venues are quite big, their costs are quite big as well.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way to get an extra £1,000, that might pay for the hotels for everyone and stuff.
Yeah, you do sort of need to watch that when you're in a band. Like if someone's doing something for you, it's not because they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart.
No.
They need paying.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this guy's driving us to the airport. He needs paying.
Yeah. So what was the next stage for your band?
So we released a single it was just, I think it was in America, but it was mainly California. It's just a little indie label. And then we came back to Oxford, carried on doing the Toilet Tour, and started recording an album with Chris, and that turned into an album called Kowloon House, which was then picked up by IRS Records in America. IRS used to have like REM and the Police and stuff on them. And they were like, I guess, sort of quite a cool indie, but sort of big label as well. It was one of the Copelands who owned IRS, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it like a subsidiary of another?
I may
label?
have been. Probably was. And then we went and we did an album with them, and then we went on tour and toured the album for about 4 months, just around the whole UK, whole of America, and in a little Dodge van that we all had to drive.
Right.
We had a tour manager and a sound guy, and they were husband and wife, and they had a dog called Jack, and it was on the tour with us, and we had this Dodge van and like a U-Haul trailer with all our gear in, and you'd have these sort of benches along the back, which you could just sleep on and stuff.
Did you stay at hotels, or were you sleeping in the van?
We slept in two to a bed in like Motel 6s and stuff like that. Horrible little motels.
Yeah.
I used to sleep with Mark, the guitarist, and the rhythm section slept together because they were like just horrible. But you spend 4 months sleeping with your guitarist.
Yeah.
It's like you get to know each other. But it was really brilliant going around America, so we just went round and round and round and across the middle and just around and out there. By that time, Supergrass just released I Should Coco, and I think we hooked up for a tour with them where we were supporting them. They had a big bus. We still had our little.
They had like a Nightline or something.
Yeah, they had a proper one.
Yeah,
and we'd just meet them at the gigs and do our thing. And then we'd pick up tours. So we'd start with a tour which was like an IRS tour, and we'd do some other tour in between, and pick up a tour of Supergrass and some other tour, and all these tours would just like keep endlessly going on. And we would drink too much and play every night. We'd play like the Whiskey, 2 nights at the Whiskey and stuff like that. And I remember it's Steve Jones, isn't it, from Sex Pistols? Yeah. I remember him being in the dressing room at one point because we were in there with Supergrass, and like this guy was in there. And we were all talking like, he was like, Steve Jones, Sex Pistols, and we were like, fuck. He was like really, really went round it. I guess he must have been like a radio DJ at that point as well, because I know he did that at some time. Then.
It feels like every rock star ends up just living in LA. Yeah, especially British rock stars. They for a while just doing something.
Yeah, it was weird. So that was all a bit of a blur, but really fun blur, because you get into the routine of, you wake up with a hangover. You get breakfast in like a Denny's or something. Yeah. You get in the van, you drive for 10 hours maybe to the next venue, and then you sound check. You get some dinner, do a gig, get drunk, go back to your hotel, do the same thing again.
Yeah. And what age were you at this point?
You must have been 22, 23, 24. Yeah.
So did you skip? You didn't go to uni or anything like that?
No, that's the bit I regret actually. Right. I went to art college when we started the Daisies. I went to art college for 2 years, just to be around people who liked doing arty stuff. And then the music started getting like we were making some headway with the music, and you do I'm going to go and look at uni things. Went to look at all the unis, and it's like at the end of it, it's like, do I go for the music thing, or do I go to uni? And I couldn't have really done both. Yeah, I could have probably done both if I'd done it in uni in Oxford, but yeah. And then so I chose that. I chose music, and that sort of took me off on that. That took me off on a lifetime of doing that, which is
well, it's not a bad decision, is it?
It's just what happens. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I would have liked to have done both, really. Yeah, and there's probably no reason why you can't. No. Well, maybe there is.
It's hard. I think that certainly for me, there comes a point where you have to make a decision in any part of your life. It's like, what am I going to do? You have to commit, don't you? Yeah. Especially, it's a bit easier to commit when you're younger, but yeah, I'm going to go down this path, I'm going to go down that path. Otherwise, you don't want to do half. You don't want to go half in and.
Well, that's what we. Yeah, and in a way, that's what we did. So when I finished art college, we were probably 2 years in. That was a 2-year course. Then we were 2 years in doing the Daisies. We'd started making some headway, doing these cassettes and stuff, and it was all good fun. And I remember I said to the bass player, he said, "Look, we should move to Oxford," because I used to live with my parents in Freeling still at that point. So let's move to Oxford and we'll be a proper band, live in Oxford and do it. And I said, "How do we do that?" He goes, "Well, all you got to do is sign on. Get housing benefit as well, and we can just do the band full time." So we did the band full, like we'd rehearse all the time and sign on and get housing benefit. I lived in a big house in Jericho, huge, like I had a basement, so I guess it's 4 stories. And I lived there with a guy called Mac who used to run the Jericho Tavern, and he was also in a band called Arthur Turner's Love Child. He's a brilliant songwriter, brilliant, but liked alcohol quite a lot as well. So he was sometimes a bit unpredictable. And our guitarist at the time, Mark, was working in a bank, and we said to Mark, you have to quit your job and sign on. Yeah. And he lived in the same house as us, and he was like, all right. And he just quit his job in a bank and signed on no money and did the band. I've
got to wonder how many bands of that era did that. It seems like everyone was doing it, even especially a lot of those Manchester bands talk about that all the time.
Everyone did it, and it was like, I remember going to a Restart interview when you were like long-term unemployed. So when we'd been like, if you were unemployed for a couple of years, you'd be sent on these courses. And I remember being in a room sent on this course, being in my 20s, early 20s. And they say, and going around the room, they're talking about why we're unemployed, and there'd be these older guys who like talking about this sort of how hard it was, and they sort of came to me and like a complete little snot. I was like, well, I just sort of see it as like a grant, you know, so I can do the band. And like, it's like, and everyone's like, you complete prick. It's like, and looking back, what a little twat.
I think as we all get probably more conservative as we get older as well, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's like they were all probably thinking, well, we have to pay for you to do that.
Yeah, and I was just going, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a grant, so I can do the band, and then one day we'll make some money out of the band, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And eventually we did, and I guess we paid, you know, through taxes and paid my way at that point. But to be sat there with those people with real lives talking like that, it's a bit embarrassing. But that's what we did, and a lot of people did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't see how you could do it any other way.
Yeah,
like if you want to fully commit to being in a band and playing music, assuming that your band isn't going to make any money at the beginning, it's just what you got to do.
Well, I was watching that documentary about Damien Hirst and all those guys last night, and there was like the late 80s and early 90s when they started like putting on their own art exhibitions and stuff, and they were talking about how they would get like a young enterprise allowance of 40 quid, and it was like, you know, set your own business up, and it was like complete, they were just using that to be artists. So all artists were doing it, you know. It's a little way around it to give buying yourself time to get good at what you're doing.
And in a way it's kind of what it's for. In a way, if you think about it, you know, like it's to help you to get a job and make a career. I think most people don't think of music as typically something that fits into that category. But it is, you know.
It is, even on the very sort of local level that I'm perhaps involved with now. It still is, you know. It all feeds into the economy. Well,
it does eventually. You're going to pay it back eventually, won't you? So how did the band transform from one band into
so after we toured America for ages, and then we came back to the UK and we started recording another Daisies album and did loads more. We're playing like Reading Festival and stuff like that at this point, and getting on like small stages on those little festivals and things. That's the Daisies. And I think we did. Did we do any? I think the Daisies might have supported. No, maybe it wasn't the Daisies. We were getting some little cheeky little support slots, which were nice, and little tours around the UK. But really, essentially, we kept missing out. You know, everyone's got those. We could have had this major deal. Everyone's got their major deal story they missed out on. I remember Chris would always be like, "We're just right on the edge of this. So we nearly got signed to like the V2 label." And he's like, "Oh, they've gone with this other band instead called the Stereophonics." Like, oh shit! Damn it. And it's knockback after knockback, you know. Like it's nearly there, and then you don't quite get across. It's all those knockbacks.
I don't know if you found this, or whenever I was trying to, when my band Little Brother Eli, when we were trying to make it, we were constantly trying to get label people to our gigs, and it was like they'd always be like, "Yeah, you know, I beat your gig," and then you'd invite all your mates and cram it, and then they'd just never turn up, or something would happen, or then you get a phone call the next day. "Oh no, I was going to come, but you know, you know." Well, this was still. I guess this was still. It felt like it was much more reachable just because Chris and Bryce were there, and they would like, and Supergrass were flying, Radiohead were flying. It was like, so it was still like, oh, it's, you know, they're the right boys to get these guys here. And they feel like, did you feel like they sort of really believed in? Yeah, I felt like they believed in us. Yeah, and they did. I mean, they put a lot of effort and energy into it. So I was really grateful to them for all that. And so they'd be going, oh, it's just not quite working. I remember Chris saying to me once, eventually, like, you know, I just don't think we're going to get a major to bite on this, or something like some words to this phase. I think we might have to like have a rethink, like just have a, maybe is there a way of tweaking it, like tweaking the sound, tweaking like the and like maybe get someone else in, freshen things up, and just change it. You sort of think, oh, and I could have taken that like either like, oh, he's given up on us, or like, oh, well, why not? We've been doing this for long enough, and we've had a great time. Why don't we just you know, those songs are those songs. There's these other ones coming through. They could feed into this another thing, and the sound is always developing. So I wrote another bunch of songs. We got a keyboard player in called Richard Brinklow, who's an amazing keyboard player, and I should note also probably the best musician. At that point, we're still just four blokes who are having to hammer it away in rehearsal to get anywhere remotely good. Richard's like a proper player, proper musician who can do it all. And so we get him in to come for a jam with us, and one daytime, because we're still all signing on, and or we might have a publishing deal at that point.
I think we did. And anyway, he comes along and he plays, and we try a few of these new songs I've written, and they're a bit more. It's probably in that time when Portishead had just released Dummy, and Radiohead had probably done OK Computer. So the music seems sort of getting a bit more like a bit.
Yeah.
Trip hop has just sort of happened, or is still happening, and things are getting a bit spacey and heady. And so I wrote a few more songs that are in that vein, and we really quickly get like an album's worth of material together and start demoing them. And Chris and they obviously work their magic and send these things out. And before you realise it, we're playing at the Zodiac, now the O2, and there's like Rick Rubens and Matey Boy from American, whatever label was it they were on? They were not Def Jam, were they? What label were they on? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Def Jam. Was their label? That's the one they did lots of hip hop stuff on.
Yeah, they're at the gig to see us, and then there's like Polydor and someone else. There's like 3 labels or something at this Zodiac gig, and we're playing these new songs. We're a bright fresh new band.
So you changed the name at this point?
Changed the name to Medal, and we got a new sound and a new band, and they're managed by Chris and Bryce. So everyone's like, oh, we'll come and have a look. And it was just like, so what happened was, and I don't know if any of this was deliberate, but Chris said, go and talk to Rick Rubens, and I can't remember who his partner was. It's not George Draculius. I don't know. They say go and have a chat with them in the dressing room. So we go and sit in there in the dressing room with them. And at that point as well, we've been hanging around with James Lavelle, who does Mowax. Did Mowax. He'd been coming to loads of our gigs as well, and we really wanted to sign to Mowax because it was like we were listening to that, so it was all a bit smoky and all that. So we really wanted to sign with them. But these guys came into the dressing room, and we just sat and smoked with them and talked with them and drank with them. And meanwhile, there was like at least 2 other record companies out the front, not talking to us at all, and they've just seen us go backstage with these guys, and they're all thinking, shit, what's going on here? And then on the Monday after that thing, Polydor just said, here's a do you want to sign a record deal? And we were like, yeah, all right. I mean, in retrospect, we should have said no, we want to sign to Mowax, and have fun like that, but it was exciting to sign to Polydor. And
also, when you've been waiting for an opportunity
for a major, it
feels like you struck while the iron's hot. Really,
yeah, just get on with it.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we recorded an album as Medal in Sawmill Studio, which was. But the thing as a Medal, we were really enjoying making music that was kind of a bit more spacey, a bit more arty, maybe a bit more self-indulgent.
Yeah.
And probably being artists instead of like grubby punks or something.
Although from the music that I've listened to of it, it's still very song based.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's just the way it's dressed.
It's not as weird as you could have, as some of the other bands that
no, it's not.
Going.
It's still, but it's kind of like. But I think it wants to be DJ Shadow and Pink Floyd somehow. But with a melodic pop influence.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, there's one song on there called "Up Here for Hours," which was a single, which I wrote deliberately to get a record deal. Like I remember being quite consciously like, "Oh, this will work." And someone said to me, like, said, "What have you been doing today?" I said, "I just wrote a song that will get us a record deal." And it was like it felt a little bit more cynical than the Daisies. But I think that's, if you were gonna, maybe after having a chat with Chris and him saying try some different stuff, maybe I just thought, actually, yeah, why not?
There's a lesson in that as well, because some people do not want to change anything about what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's also valid and fine as well. But it is, if someone gives you some advice, regardless of who it is, it's always something you can take away.
Especially someone you trust.
Yeah.
Who believes in what you're doing anyway.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not a massive jump. I mean, I'd written songs that were going to fit the new band anyway, so it was already starting to. Because you listen to stuff. I mean, bands always evolve and change, and I always like to write. I always feel like, especially album-wise or a body of work-wise, I always write a song that's almost a reaction against what you have written, and you always want to push it on somewhere new. Yeah,
and I think that's sometimes like a funny thing for fans, because they sometimes want you to do the same thing.
Well, it's that sort of Blur Oasis thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you could say Oasis pretty much did Oasis, and Blur would often, they would sort of change, they'd have lots of different things going on there.
I think Blur, in a way, they're a bit like the Beatles in the sense that their catalogue. If you were to put it all like a greatest hits. it's kind of, it would seem incoherent in a way, because it's just like, oh, it's a bit of this and a bit of that, and
Which I like bands like that, like say the Beatles.
Yeah.
If you listen to a Beatles album, like the White Album was one of my favourite albums, and that's like, I mean, you listen to that, it's just like some crazy Spotify playlist, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's a proper mashup. And I like bands like Ween who do that. I remember the Ween album Chocolate and Cheese, which has got this just all the stuff on there is insane. And then they do like a country album that follows that, and it's like, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think a lot of American bands are more inclined to do that than British bands as well. But maybe maybe that's just a old thing.
I think it's very difficult. I would find it very difficult to stay in the same place.
Yeah.
For years and years and years. I guess like AC/DC and bands like that do it very well.
Yeah.
But it gets to a point where, and I had this with my band at Brother Eli when we were doing the blues rock thing. I felt like I was just coming up with blues riffs because I felt like I should.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted to. It's like, I can't use that because it sounds too this. I have to. We have to play it on a slide guitar or something.
Yeah. Which is weird. It's funny you say that. I always think I get trapped in like, oh, I've got to write this because that's what we are. So quite often if I'm writing, especially with the computer, I always give myself a different name or different folder. So and I pretend it's a different project.
Yeah.
That I can be whatever I want to be. And then it just gives me that freedom to like not write something that I've already written.
Yeah. I hate that discussion. I've had that with producers in the past where you go, okay, and this song I want to do this. And they go, you can't do that. You're like, well, why not? Oh, you don't do that when you're doing this. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't get it.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, some people like to put things into boxes and categories, and that can be good, but also it can be a bit stifling. People
always say the public like that. They like because you want to get an album, you want to know what you're getting.
Yeah,
whereas I actually want to. I kind of the opposite. I kind of want to get an album that surprises me.
Yeah,
a little bit. I want to. Yeah, I kind of know what I'm going to get. I know the sound. I know what the sort of feel is, but I like within that to have things that you sort of change. I mean, I go back to like bands like The Cure, which I loved and still do. I put on an album. I put on their first album. What's the pink one with the Hoover on in the fridge? Is it Three Imaginary Boys?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and that's like a little new wave punk album. And then and then they've obviously changed and developed into other stuff. But even on one of their albums, they'd have like there's noisier things, and then there's like sort of weirder things and poppier things and all sorts. It's odd. You might get a sort of big stadium-y thing and then something more much smaller and cutesy or weird. So I quite like things to be varied.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree.
So I didn't have a problem changing the sound with Metal. I didn't have a problem with that.
And he had a keyboard now as well.
And we had this keyboard player who was really musical.
Yeah.
And we'd just try things out and mess about.
And was anyone else writing other than you?
We wrote a few songs together, like in the room jamming at that point, and then that kind of, which worked on a few songs, but it still was easier to write a song and then work out then take the song apart and put it back together and do that sort of stuff. I think Metal sort of we overthought rather a lot of how it should be presented, and we'd spend ages taking something apart and making it really minimal and then making it bigger and so that maybe it wasn't as... We probably started overthinking things. I think we thought we were like proper artists at that point, which is kind of what happened with the reviews as well. Everyone, I think the Melody Maker liked it, but the NME absolutely panned it and called us like pretentious idiots, and like really they compared it to like Pink Floyd and which was all the references we wanted.
It's a weird magazine, NME, because I find that when I used to read it, their criticisms of stuff, they'd say, "Oh God, I don't like this band, sounds like Led Zeppelin." And I'd be like, "But I like Led Zeppelin."
Yeah.
So
they absolutely panned it, and then we'd also spent loads of money on all the artwork. They spent loads of money on and things like that, and so it didn't. And I think it sold like 30,000 or something. Which now I'd be like, well, that's fantastic. But obviously, if there's a major record label ploughing money into something, I guess it's not enough.
That'd get you on the charts now if you sold 30,000.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone told me that. I might have had it wrong actually. But but weirdly with Metal, I kind of felt like because we were artier and a bit, we thought we were anyway. When we do shows, we started doing quite big shows. I remember I didn't talk to the audience in the same way and interact with the audience in the same way. I started getting much more fear on the stage. I felt like a bit disconnected from what we were doing.
That's interesting.
Because I think I wasn't communicating. It didn't feel like it was us together, band, and it felt like it was us versus them almost.
Right.
In this kind of like, here's the music, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
This thing, instead of it being a bit more together. So I started sort of feeling a bit more disconnected from it. And I remember saying to the guy who signed us, I think we were supporting the Blue Tones on some sort of 2000 style sort of tour seater thing, and they were quite big shows. And I remember going out, being really nervous before we went on, because I used to get nervous with metal, but not so much with the Daisies. And I just remember saying to him, I'm really not cut out for this. I'm not cut out for this at all. And he's the guy who signed us.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, we got dropped after that album.
Right.
I mean, it's not really any surprise, really. He didn't sell enough, and the singer's just told you he's not cut out for it.
We're being honest, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I think I probably was. I think I was probably just drinking too much booze.
Yeah.
And getting a bit too jangly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of being focused on what we were doing. Yeah.
I think in different bands, like when you're in a sort of a more sort of raucous, punky band, it feels more like you're a gang.
Yeah.
And everyone's got your back.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you're doing something more arty,
yeah,
it's a bit like, oh well, look at this thing I've created.
Exactly.
It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah, it's odd. And whilst I like the music, it just felt like there was a subtle mind, sort of just a change in how it felt. So yeah, but we traveled. We toured Japan and Europe and stuff with that, and we played some awesome festivals and played at Glastonbury and things like that on the main stage.
What was the highlight with that band?
I really enjoyed playing it. We played at Reading Festival one year, because we used to always do Reading and stuff like that. And I just remember one gig in Reading when I looked out, and it was one of the offshoot stages. But I looked out and there was I could just see loads of people from Oxford there in the crowd. Like wherever I looked, I could see someone, and it was probably towards the end of Medal actually. But it's one of those moments where you properly got lost in the music, and it sounded good on stage, and it felt good. And it was like really good. One of those moments when you're properly like, it's all electric and it's all like happening. It's like, whoa, this is really good fun. I
always think that like music's a bit like a drug in that sense, because we have those moments. When people say like, well, I used to take drugs and I'm always searching for that high that I had the first time, whatever. I think music's a bit like that, because we all remember those gigs. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, let's get back to that, whatever that was. Let's do that. But actually, that might only happen like 1 in 10 or 1 in 20. It's hard to just become it sounds silly, but become the music. Yeah, you become the music, but also I find when I'm in that zone and everything's going and it sounds nice, like I'm not thinking about anything else in my life. I'm not thinking about bills or worries or anything. You're just on this high, you're just riding the whole time. Yeah, it's really nice. I don't know if you found that like at the end of touring, I find this now, at the end of touring, I find it quite hard to get back into, even if I'm only gone for like 2 weeks or something. When I come back, I'm like trying to do normal stuff, and it feels a bit like depressing or something. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it used to be really odd stopping touring. It used to be really odd coming back from like a long studio session. So I used to go to the studio for like a couple of weeks at a time, and then you come back into the real world and you'd be like, just buying groceries. It was odd. There's something about being in that different bubble, isn't there? Yeah. And then coming back to real life. Yeah. Good though, really good. Yeah, it's good fun. So what did you do? What happened to the band after that? After you were dropped? We released a second album on our own label, which was even more silly, which is called what was it called? So it was Drop Your Weapon was the one on Polydor, and then it was another one called Stuntman. The Stuntman had a really nice song called Stuntman on it, and then it had loads of sort of spoken word and like oddness as well. Okay. And like it was a bit more like just soundtracky stuff, but with some songs as well, and it's quite. I haven't listened. I've listened to the first album. I'm not listening to the second. The second album's not around on. I don't think it's on Spotify. I don't think. I'm not even sure it's on. Like YouTube, it might be on YouTube or something. But it was a bit more experimental, and we were just like properly having fun. Again, thinking we were artists, and then some of it's really nice. And then after that, we toured that around the UK a bit. We sold a few of those, and then after that, I sort of just let it fizzle out. Just sort of because at that point I'd done music for decades, and you'd start, that thing where you sometimes sacrifice
friends and family because you've got gigs and rehearsals and tours and stuff, and so I remember just letting that fizzle out, and not really. We never said let's stop doing it. We just sort of didn't pick it back up after a tour.
Yeah,
and people, no one really like got on the phone and said, "Are we rehearsing again? When are we doing anything?" No one like really did it. It was almost like, I think we're a bit tired of this.
Yeah, it's time. It's time to stop.
I think we're all tired out.
Yeah,
well, I don't remember having the big chat.
No,
we just all went, "Oh, I'm a bit tired of this."
I think it's in a way it's a nicer way to do it, because it's always a bit sad when there's like one or two members who really want to carry on doing it, and everyone who just goes, "Oh, actually, do you know what? I don't want to do it anymore." Yeah, I'm tired.
I think we were really hurt. I think we were bruised and hurt by getting the dream of your major deal, and then realising that actually that's just the first run of the ladder, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
you've got to keep focusing, keep moving.
Well, I realised with my band, and we still do my band, but it's more of a fun thing. I've sort of played professionally with other artists now, but I got to a point where we had a record deal in Germany and all these bits and pieces, but I sat down and actually did, for the first time I ever did the maths.
Yeah.
How much do we need to earn to it? So we need to earn, let's say we want to pay ourselves 20 grand a year. Okay, so we need to earn make like 100 grand in profits for the band each year. I'm like, yeah, but the manager's going to take 20%. So actually we need to earn more than 100 grand a year. And I just looked at it and started adding up. Let's divide that between each gig. And I was like, we're never going to get there, ever. I don't see a point where we could ever earn enough money. Yeah. We're just doing band stuff all the time. And that would really make sense. And where everyone else in the band would be like really happy to do that. And me included. So, yeah, I think you're right. It is getting a label deal, which to be honest, is not really what people want to do these days anyway. No. That is just the first step, and then there's all these other things you need to do to get to the top. It's a long way to the top.
Exactly. And I just think we were just worn out, and I also just missed a lot of life. A lot of my life had just been in vans, going to gigs and in sound checks.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to just hang out with friends more, and do that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think so. I didn't do music for a couple of years.
Really? Stopped?
Yeah, just didn't do it at all. I just just forgot about it for a bit.
And what did you do in those 2 years?
I was working in a cafe, and I was drinking with people there and having a normal life.
Yeah. Which must have seemed like a novelty.
It was really, it was really fun.
Yeah.
And just hanging out and being around most weekends instead of not. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. It was really good. And I was still in Oxford and still go to shows and stuff, but and still enjoy listening to music, but I wasn't making it or writing. And then I accidentally started, I don't know why I started writing again. I started writing again, I guess because you do, don't you? And I started writing again and wrote a few songs, and a friend of mine, and we started a band called Family Machine, and that was just because I wrote some songs, and a friend of mine who was knocking about with me was a drummer, and he was like, you should do these. So we started doing them, and then he knew a bass player, and we can get him to come along. And it's like, oh no, we're doing a band again. Oh, no.
Like you've been tricked into it.
Yeah, and then we were doing it before we realised we were like having some really good fun. It felt really liberating. And the first Family Machine album is a real hodgepodge of styles, and it's really like got lots of different types of songs on it.
Where did you record it?
We did all of that at Courtyard Studios. I went back to Ian. It was then Ian Davenport. I should have said Ian Davenport did all the recording demos for Medal. I'd loved recording with Ian. He was I guess he was quite new at production when he started working then. And then obviously all this time had elapsed and he'd become much better at production. Oh, not better, he was always good, but much more experienced. So I remember sending him a song I'd done. I'd done a song on just using a sampler with loads of just samples and stuff. Called Got It Made, and I'd sent it to him and said, can we work on this together, because I think you'd be really good at this. And he was like, yeah, this is wicked. So he did some stuff in his home studio, and then we did a little bit in Courtyard, and then with Family Machine we just started doing little bits in Courtyard with Ian and building up like an album over a couple of years.
And what were you recording onto at that point?
They were using they were no longer using tape at that point.
Right.
In fact, the Medal album wasn't on tape either. That was at Sawmill Studio. I think they used something called Soundscape in those days, which is like a DAW that not many people used.
Yeah.
I think Ian used Soundscape for a while, and then he went to Pro Tools. Yeah, and it was really fun. And just writing stuff for the pure joy of it as a 3-piece, just a bass, drums and guitar. And then a friend of ours, Neil, he joined us as the extra guitarist, sort of halfway through making that album. And we had loads of fun with Family Machine, and just again started doing the toilet tour of the UK and doing some of those gigs. And some of that was a bit like, oh man, I've done this quite a lot, and some of these gigs are a little bit pointless. Yeah, some of them are fine, but some of it's like, oh. So it's tricky.
I don't think that now I could go back to doing the touring and gigs that I did when I was in my early 20s. No. I don't think anyone would convince me to do it.
No.
It's just too full on.
Especially, and that's as well when you're working as well. Yeah. It was fine when we were signing on. Yeah. But when you're working and you're going to a gig and you might play in front of 10 or 20 people, you're getting home really late and then you're getting up for work and then doing... Yeah. And we were playing like probably 2 or 3 gigs a week at one point with Family Machine around the place, and it was like, that's a lot of gigs for someone not really, and some of them were rubbish. Yeah, I remember with little brother Eli, like when we would do like over 100 shows a year, and we had jobs. Yeah, and I remember, I'm not vocalizing it, but I remember I've had this conversation with Alex, our singer, later on, and it felt like a job. Like I had to be like, I finish work and I'd be like, oh. Could go do a gig, and you go to like Sheffield to play like in front of like one person, and then you turn around and come home. Yeah. It's like, and then you get to a point where you're like, why am I doing that? But it is fun, and it is great being like hanging out with, because you hang out with your mates all the time. Well, this is it. You're a gang, aren't you? Yeah. And it's good fun, and you're making music, and it's and you're playing it to people, and sometimes you get a good show. Yeah. Sometimes you get a really good. We used to love like the sort of arts centre shows that you wouldn't know. I remember playing one in Gloucester and them saying, "Oh, you've got to play for an hour," and we were like, "Oh my god, I think we've got about half an hour's set." So we just started doing tons and tons of chat in between. It was like an audience with. It was really, really fun night. It's
great when you turn up to somewhere you don't know what it's going to be, and then it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's just a really fun night. And again, it's one of those nights where it was properly interactive, and everyone was just having just a stupid fun night. Yeah. So I quite enjoyed that. Yeah.
And sometimes the terrible gigs are the funniest. Yeah. As well. I remember we did a gig once. It was like in a pub, and this guy set the PA up for us. Oh, thanks. And we can we wear the monitors? He went. He had a strong sort of West Country accent. He went, monitors? And I was like, yeah. He said, oh, we've not had a band ask for monitors before. And I was like, well, I want to hear myself sing. It'd be quite useful. And then he shouted to his mate. He's like, Dave, this band wants monitors. And they're going, he wants what? Like monitors? What are those? Because they can hear yourself sing. He's like, we've not had anyone ask for them before. It's like, where are we?
What are we doing here? Yeah. But I really enjoyed. So Family Machine was good fun, and I think we made two albums with Family Machine, and I'm really proud of them. They're really good, and it was really nice to do it with some friends as well. Yeah. And it's nice to do it with a completely different bunch of people, because then it was like just something that's fresh and new.
Different dynamic as well.
Yeah, and they're much better players probably as well. Not that the Daisies and Metal weren't good players, just that they were sort of probably naturally more musical, or actually not naturally more musical. They're probably the opposite of that. They're just more theory based there. Yeah, because I'm completely non-theory, and like. I'd write stuff in different tunings and I'd play it to them. They go, what's that? And I go, I don't know. And they just have to work it out.
Have you picked stuff up from them?
No. I'm still not remotely interested in the theory, which means everything takes me so long.
But interestingly, I think a lot of people come up with more original stuff, because I think there's sort of people. Some people over theorize it and go, yeah, well, this is how you write a song. You go from the 1 chord to the minor 6th, and it's like, I think that can sometimes be a bit of a hindrance.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because I know I've plateaued a long time ago at my theoretical expertise. That's probably why I just end up buying weird instruments or effects pedals to inspire me to write, or a different tuning. Right. I'll put it in a completely different tune and I'll write something. And then you play it to them, they go, "You've just written something in G again, mate, or C again." It's like, "Oh, but now it's like this."
Well, Joni Mitchell calls it the lost tunings.
Right.
She's written a lot of songs in odd tunings.
Yeah.
And then she has to go and play these songs live.
Yeah.
And she's like,
"I don't know what I did."
Because you probably do the same. You probably just twist until it sounds correct, right?
Yeah.
And then you might do that recording, and then you come back. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I've now started videoing them on my phone, and I actually go, "I say this is this tuning, and the capo's here."
Right. Yeah.
So that I can actually go back and go, "Oh, that's what I was doing."
Yeah.
Because I have no idea.
But there is, capos, open tunings, all that sort of stuff. I think it's really good for creating new sounds.
Yeah.
I used to be really into open tunings.
Yeah.
Just because as soon as you strum the guitar, you don't even put any fingers down. It's like, oh, it sounds great.
And also you can just use one finger sometimes and move it around, and it's like, ooh,
yeah,
it's a song here.
And if you can play a chord just by even sometimes just barring, I think it's a really good. I think that all those things are really good tools. And like you say, a new instrument, you can just be into something because it's new.
Yeah, or sit down at a piano. I can't play piano at all. Sit down and write a song on the piano because it's there.
Yeah.
And it's great fun.
Nice. So, eventually that band ended.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think why? I don't know. We just stopped doing it. I think the drummer left. He left to do stuff, and when a member of the band leaves that sort of starts the band, it kind of feels like, oh, maybe that's gone. So he left halfway through writing the second album, and then we were like, we had some good drummers filling for us, but it was like it kind of felt like maybe that sort of run its course. So we stopped doing that, and then I started writing stuff again. Oh no, I just started doing some film work for John Spira. I did his Star Wars movie, Elstree 1976. He said, "Can you do the soundtrack for it?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." I had no idea how to do a soundtrack at all.
So how did you approach it?
I just basically, so I had a chat with him about what vibe he wanted, and he said he wanted it to be sort of lo-fi, and I was thinking, great, I can do lo-fi. And he wanted it to sort of sound a bit like maybe sort of Grandaddy, Sparkle Horsey sort of stuff.
Yeah, because if he'd said I want it to sound like John Williams, then I'd be in trouble.
Be in big trouble. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll use sort of toy instruments, sort of synths and acoustic instruments and small things you can do in a home studio, and there won't be too many drums unless they're like programmed or drum machine things. So I got my palette sorted, which was quite good. It's quite nice to say, okay, that's what you're using. And then, but I wanted it to make it sound beautiful as well. And John's films are quite melancholy, and a lot of my music's quite melancholy, which is why we get on, I think. And so I wanted it to have that sort of beauty as well, sort of a lo-fi beauty. And
were you doing it to the actual images?
Yeah. So he would send me, but he really was like, "Oh, I want you to do themes for each of the." Because it's a Talking Heads interview type thing. Yeah. I want to do themes for each of these. So there's not a lot of room to get music in anyway, but sometimes there's juicy bits. I want to give each character or talking person a different theme, and that was kind of also stifling and also quite good because you could hang something on some person and then do versions of their theme. Yeah. So I started doing that, and he'd send me just roughs of who they were talking, and then I'd sort of write something. I'd just write something based on who they were. But I don't know what that even means based on who. I'd watch a video of them and then write some music that seemed to fit with them emotionally in some way.
It's difficult to describe that feeling, isn't it?
That's nonsense, isn't it?
It's like when you meet someone, you get a certain feeling. Sometimes you like them, sometimes you don't like them.
Yeah, write something that somehow fits them emotionally. Which is a nonsense, but it's what you do, isn't it? And then he started dropping the film on me in bits, in sort of chunks, and I was able to start slotting things in, and then I would be able to rewrite things or remove things to fit to the film, and some stuff I'd write to the film. Just sit there with a guitar, and some of it's really minimal, so you could just do little things with it.
Recording as you go.
Yeah, just with the piano and just do things, and then he'd always change the edit anyway, so you'd have to then jig it around anyway, and manipulate it by editing.
I think it's a bit like what we were talking earlier before the podcast starts, that thing of like when you're invested in it, it's like you'll spend as much time as it takes to get it right, because it's worth it in the end. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. It was really good, and I was using like a little tiny what's a little digi design thing interface and a not a great mic, and I remember taking it to the somewhere in Soho where they do the big music mastering bit to the film. It's in a big sort of cinema, the leather sofas, and there's a guy at a desk with a huge desk, and he's got like he's sort of doing the sub stuff and the splitting it all up into cinema sort of sound, because
it's turning it into like what surround sound
almost. Not it wasn't. I don't know if it was surround, but it was definitely like, you know, this. Yeah, maybe, because this will be over here and this will be there, and it's all about the frequencies. And
did you just give him the stems? To mix it, or did you mix it?
I'd mixed it,
right,
and then I got Tim Tran to master it for me.
Right.
So I'd mixed it, and I said, so it was all these individual cues, and I'd mixed it, and then I said, Tim, can you make that sound really good?
Yeah.
Because you know, I'd said, get rid of any horrible frequencies that are going to become a nuisance later on.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit slapdash, and he did that, and then we went to this place. But we at this place, and I was thinking, I mean, I know that I can hear like the headphones bleeding on that track, but it was too late and it's done. And I said to this guy who was doing it, and he's like won awards like for being the sound guy. I said, "Is this all right? Is there a bit of bleed on that?" And he went, "Mate, compared to loads of stuff we get, this is like absolutely fine." He's either being really nice or like. He must have to deal with some absolute dross, because it was like really like I was properly just getting away with it.
It's funny that, isn't it, when you get to that point when and it's difficult not to like panic, isn't it?
Yeah,
and be like,
I'm going to get found out.
Wrong. Yeah,
I'm definitely going to get. This is when they find out. They absolutely find out that I just made it at home on my computer. Yeah, with some stuff.
Which is what everyone's doing, and it's what everyone's doing now for sure as well.
Yeah, and because that sort of imposter syndrome is like, I always have that. I mean, lots of people do. Yeah. But that was the point when I thought, they are definitely going to find out now about how bad this is. And they didn't. They were like, it's fine, this works really well. Great. And then it was great. And anyway, sort of doing that, when I was doing that, I was making sort of music that was obviously a bit more sort of ethereal, but still quite lo-fi. And I started writing I wrote a few pieces for that I didn't end up using for that, but I ended up turning into songs just because I did. And I wrote a song called Auto Harp, and I ended up using that and turning that into at first it was just me, then I got someone to drum on it, then I got Feeler to play bass on it, who was in Family Machine, and Neil to do some stuff, and it was like, oh, we're putting a band together. And so we put a band together, and it was basically just getting together and drinking coffee and playing these songs that I'd written. And
what was the vibes of the song, did it come out of the scoring that you were doing?
Yeah, so a lot of them had. Yeah. So there was less emphasis on structure. It'd be more like a feel. You know, maybe it hasn't got a chorus at all. It's just got some words and then a nice big bit of music, and some of them are structured. And as we started hanging out together, then you'd start writing stuff that was more just fun to play as a band as well. So sometimes it's some quite punky, noisy things tucked in amongst sort of these more sort of cinematic pieces, really.
It's interesting, actually. I always find, like, sometimes I'll be doing something, and in the back of my mind, I don't know if you have this as well, I'm like, I like this, but I know that as soon as I take it to the band, it's going to make more sense, because they're going to interpret whatever it is that you've done in a way that kind of is more practical or makes more sense or something.
And what I started doing is, because I was working on my own with just the computer and just writing, I then started, before we started really rehearsing as a band, we'd do a bit of that, and then we'd do less of that, and then I'd get people, if there was no one coming up that week, I'd say, do you want to play a part on here? And they'd play a part on this recording that we were doing, and they'd always build it up in bits sometimes, and that meant that when we did go and rehearse, everyone knew what they were supposed to be playing. But then they'd also elaborate on that in the room, and songs have definitely grown now in a live way. Yeah, that people are really like playing on them in a way that they weren't playing on when they first were like, oh, I'll just write a part for that, which is really nice, and you can feel that tension. So we play. So there's 3 guitarists in this band bed, and Tom I've known him for years, but he's really noisy. He's a really noisy, rocky, punky guitarist, which is sort of the opposite to where a lot of these songs come from. So the tension between what he's doing and where these songs are, it's really like, sometimes it'd be a lot easier to just say, Tom, don't play. Yeah. But having him there is really interesting, really cool, because that tension that he brings is like, it's quite good fun. Yeah, it's interesting that you embrace that. Everything, I have to use my whole self to embrace that. Really, it's interesting. Because my natural gut reaction would be like, I need to control everything and just that's too volatile and difficult. Yeah. But it's interesting to actually keep it there, because he does bring something that I definitely wouldn't ever bring.
And I think a lot of the great bands do that. Think about like the Police.
Yeah,
I've heard interviews where Sting's like, I just want them to play it like how I want them to play it.
Yeah.
But everyone in that band's like, oh, what if I do this and what if I do this, and what comes together is just totally weird.
Yeah,
it's what makes it sound like the Police.
Yeah, and it's that thing. I mean, especially when we're all sat in front of our computers writing music in that way, and everything's controlled, and we're automating everything, and the effects are in time, and everything's like, you think, oh, this is just how I want it. You're painting this thing, absolutely. But then you get in a room, or you get people to add to that or bring their own stuff to it. It's just it can be like really painful sometimes, but also really good.
Do you ever get that thing where you bring something and you're really excited about it, and you show it to everyone else, and they're a bit like, don't like it or don't get it, and it's like, it took me years to get used to that.
Yeah.
And now I don't get hurt by it at all. But I remember when I was younger, I used to, like, if I'd show it, and they'd see it, I'd be like, I'd get like an sulk. I'd be like, well, I spent 2 weeks on this thing and no one likes it. I do. I quite I sometimes happens the opposite way around, where I write something, I think this is really, I quite like this, the vibe of this. What else often happens if I write something and I don't ever finish the lyrics for it, and I bring it to the band and we like start working it, but the lyrics aren't finished, you'll be playing it and it'll sound great, it'll sound really good, and everyone's got a nice part and everyone's really enjoying it, and then like going, we could play that in front of people. I'm like, I still can't finish the lyrics, and the reason I can't finish the lyrics is because I don't like it. Right. Yeah. And
if I liked it, I would have definitely finished it. So sometimes it goes the opposite way around, and I bring something, I think, this is quite good, it's quite interesting, quite exciting, and then I'm like, it's not, otherwise I would have finished it.
Yeah.
I obviously don't like it.
A lot of lyricists don't write lyrics till the last moment as well. Yeah. Like,
I find they come at quite often, if it's going to finish and be a song that I like, usually the lyric and the song comes at the same time.
It's interesting.
Like, or a lyric.
Yeah.
Like the feature lyric will come at the same time.
The important thing.
Yeah, or it might just be the feel. Somehow the feels are. Sometimes if you haven't written the song and you sit down and you go, well, it's a bit of a melancholy one, but what is it about? And you go, well, what? And then I can write some words. And I'll be like, they're just words. They don't mean anything.
Yeah,
it's just a load of words. So you say, I want it to mean something.
But then what's funny about that is that sometimes what you write you think it means. Yeah. You'll talk to someone else about it, they think it means like something completely different,
which is fine.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't mean anything to me, I just sort of feel like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the actual point?
Yeah.
Strange, isn't it?
I've definitely worked with singers who are writing the final verse as you're setting up the microphone. They might have written the first verse and the second verse, but they haven't written all of it, and they're writing the last bit as they come up to sing it, because they either leave it to the last moment or they're just not feeling it, or think, I'll write that later. And yeah.
Well, we used to do that often in the Daisies. It'd be like the second verse is the same as the first, but with a slightly different lyric.
Yeah,
changed it. And I was listening to like a Lemonheads album the other day, and he'd done that. He'd written the same. He just redid the first verse for the third verse.
Yeah,
it's like, no one can be asked.
There's an Oasis song. I think it might be Live Forever, or one of their other hits, where the structure of the song is first verse, chorus, first verse again, guitar solo, first verse, chorus end, and it's like, really?
Because obviously it's like, well, it works, so we'll just repeat it.
Yeah, and it's fine, but it's like, it's funny, isn't it? Because other people will just slave over like a sentence for like a week. Yeah. Oh, I don't like it. I just write it. Oh, I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But then people just latch onto it anyway, because if it moves them, it moves them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I wrote what's the song? There's a bed song we do, and it's got hardly any words at all in it. The one about the bed sheets, and it's people's birthday. It's just the same lyric over and over. It's just the same. It's first verse, second verse, no chorus.
Yeah. And
it's like, you can't write a song like that.
I was teaching guitar to a kid once, and he said the most profound thing I've ever heard. He wanted to learn. We were learning a Nirvana song, and he said, I don't know what he's singing about, but it sounds really important.
Yeah.
Because I can never understand anything that's sung in that band ever. Like, you just be singing anything.
Yeah.
but it sounds like he's boiling nails in his throat. You know, it's like really just emotionally.
And that's enough.
You know, and it just I don't know what he's singing about, but it sounds like it's important, and I kind of think that's a big part of it as well. Is like if the singer's singing something and whatever they're singing it with like passion and meaning.
Yeah.
You know, even if you don't understand it, it's fine.
Yeah, but it obviously means something to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not just phoning in some stuff. Yeah.
I never understood, like, I've only have people in the pop world writing stuff. Yeah. You know, just any old word. Just, you know, I fucking want to do this and then this. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm in the club, and it's like, I can't connect with that. I find it difficult to listen to, that kind of music.
Yeah, but Bowie would do that, wouldn't he? He would chop bits of newspaper up and then drop them in.
Would he?
Occasionally, but then all his words seem to mean so much. So perhaps they do. Perhaps once you get that random stuff and put it in the right order, you go, okay.
There's some of his stuff. There's lyrics of his that I love, and I don't know why I love it. Like when he goes like, "The serious moonlight," and I'm like, "Serious moonlight." I'm like,
everyone loves that.
It makes no sense to me. But I love it, and I don't know why. Just two words that I really like to hear. Alex Turner's good at that as well. Putting words, a vacuum cleaner, Ford Cortina or something. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, cool.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
What gets you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I still love writing songs. I still like doing it. Although I do have little phases where I write lots of them, and then phases where I sort of tend not to.
So what do you do with songs that you write now?
How do I write them, or what do I do with them?
Yeah, what do you do with them?
I usually play them to the band and say, "Should we do this? Should we stick this in the set?"
Yeah.
And again, I'll either write that. We'll either record that as a live band, or we might build it up depending on what type of song it is. If it's a really bandy sounding song, we'll play it as a band. If it's something a bit more, more programmed or have that element to it.
So, at what point did you start running Glasshouse?
7 years ago, I started Glasshouse.
Okay. It's fairly recent, I guess. Then you're like, what?
Yeah, I'd worked at Cold Room for. I mean, Cold Room had lots of owners. It was started by Nick Morbath, and then I think Richard Willoughby owned it. All this time I rehearsed there.
Richard was in was he in the Dirty Earth band? Yeah,
he owned it for a while.
So Martin, the singer, his son. We were in a band together for years.
Right.
Ricky.
Okay.
We were in a band called South Parade.
Okay, I know the name.
Yeah, we used to do loads of gigs around. It was like my first sort of indie band type of thing. But he was a great drummer as well.
Yeah, he still plays. He's a good drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's him. And then Richard Haynes took it over at some point, and he'd been recording bands in a place called Dungeon Studios out in some little village. He'd recorded everyone, Supergrass and. Probably, I don't even know if he'd done Radiohead, perhaps not, but lots of bands who were making demos and stuff.
I think I've confused Richards.
Richard Haynes.
That's the Richard I'm thinking of.
Yeah. He'd recorded everyone. We'd done an EP of him as Daisies years and years ago. And I got to know him from rehearsing there, and I remember having no job at one point. I did a stupid motorbike tour from Oxford to Greece and quit our jobs, and anyway, when I came back, I didn't have any job, and he said, "Come and do some work for me around the studio." And I sat in with him, and I'd help him record bands, and he was actually running Logic and a big analog desk and stuff, and I'd set things up for him, and he'd show me how to mic things up and show me how to get it, in the desk and in the box and what to do. And I was completely computer illiterate in that way, in like music tech stuff. I'd been in studios loads, but I'd never done it.
Right, yeah.
I'd never done it. And he showed me how to do it. And
was it a recording studio entirely?
Yeah, it was a recording studio. Well, it had the main live room and then the main control room. So it was a recording studio, and he's really good. He'd been doing it for years. He could just dial it in. Band would come in and be like, be up and running really quickly because he knew what he was doing. He knew his desk. He knew the room. He was great. I remember being with him once when we were recording a band, and I said, "God, I remember again. This is a good little song, isn't it? It's just good." And he went, "Dear boy, you don't listen to the song. You never listen to the song. You've got to listen to the sound." I was like, "Oh, but I quite like songs." Yeah. But he'd been doing it for so long. He was like, "Don't get distracted by that, man. We just got to be doing this." So sometimes he was a bit like, I think that was because he was recording someone that he just didn't care about.
Right. Yeah.
And he was just like, let's just make it sound good.
Mm.
And I was like getting all into the song.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I would argue that, like, if the song's crap, it doesn't matter how good the sound is.
Well, it means nothing, does it?
Think about all the songs that we love that actually sound terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could record it on a phone and it would still be a great song.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
you're doing it day in, day out. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah. I thought that was weird, and it kind of put me off recording.
Mm.
But it also gave me an insight into what... It actually made me realise what I did and didn't want to do.
Mm.
I didn't want to record bands that I wasn't interested in.
Mm.
But I did want to use all this technology to write songs
Mm-hmm.
and how other people do that, I suppose.
Mm.
But he was great, and he taught me lots of stuff. And
you occasionally record bands, do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a smaller control room now, so more of a control cupboard. But
Mhm.
yeah, I still record bands. Did sort of Easter Island statues recently, and
Because it's a great room. That big room.
yeah,
It's fantastic in Glasshouse.
we just recorded Rats Eat Rats as well, who are a great little band. Yeah, that was it. So I do stuff. I just try not to do stuff that I know is going to be painful.
Yeah.
Not that, you know,
No.
what I should sort of qualify that a bit, because running a rehearsal studio and a recording studio, I'm less of a snob about music these days. When I was a youngster, I was like, oh, you're using a covers band, it's not real music, it's not real.
Mm.
And it's like, more like music to me feels like there's people doing it for fun, and I'm doing it for fun as well these days. And some of them are doing it just playing cover versions in this room, and they're just like having a few beers, and it's just like music club.
Yeah.
People are doing it a bit more professionally, or they want to like make it a bit more serious, and then some people are getting paid properly for it. You know, like Willie J was in yesterday rehearsing, and he's doing super well. He's brilliant.
He's doing amazing, isn't he?
Yeah. So all these people, I think, are all doing it. I always think I could give them the same respect, whoever they are. But you don't. They're just some people are getting paid for it, and some people aren't.
Yeah. And it's the best hobby you can have.
It's great.
It's like whether you're doing it professionally or not professionally.
Yeah.
It's the most fun.
I mean, we've got a WhatsApp group for our band, and it's still called Music Club, because it's basically it's just basically a music club where we used to get together and make music, and that's what we still do.
I think even if you're doing it quite professionally, it's not professional in this. Certainly for me, it's never been professional in the sense of like going to an office.
Yeah,
it's still fun, because if it's not fun, then why bother doing it?
No, exactly. You need to remind yourself that as well.
Yeah,
and but also within that, actively take out the bits that aren't fun.
Yeah,
if you can.
Yeah.
And so you get to enjoy the good stuff.
I find I have the money to fun ratio. If someone asks me to do something, it's like, if I really don't want to do it, I'd say,
does the price go up?
Yeah, I just it's £1,000, and then they say yes, and you're like, oh, right, I have to do it now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I find that a difficult balance as someone, because I play in lots of bands.
Yeah.
I always try and keep it fun, but it's not always. It's not always. I'm sometimes doing things I don't want to do.
Yeah, well, you've got to do that,
and that's part of it. It's a difficult balance, but I'm never ever. I have to remind myself it's still music, so it still is fun.
Yeah,
and I'm really lucky to do it, because a lot of people want to play music all the time, and they don't have that. They can't. At the end, they don't have the time, or they don't have the opportunity, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it should in theory still be fun most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear. No, it was great. I worked with Richard, but he got really sick. He and then he passed away, and his wife took over the studio at that point. And I ran the studio for a couple of years, and then eventually I left because I was doing something else, and she was a bit sort of erratic as well. I'm not sure she was particularly music.
It sort of fell into a little bit of disrepair, didn't it, for a while?
Yeah, so I left there, but then eventually, I think it got run down a bit, and then the lease was up, and then the landlord said to me, because I still knew the landlord from my time working there, and they said, "Do you want to take it on?" At that point, I took it on, and we sort of redid the electrics, sort of refitted it out, made it more comfortable, made it a nicer place to rehearse.
Was that a big undertaking to do?
It cost some money, and I borrowed lots of money, but I knew that it would make. I knew what it would do, what it would make, and it sort of, and it has. Fortunately, it's been really good. I mean, we'll see what the future holds. But it's what I love about it is it's a really good space to rehearse and be creative. But I also love the fact that we can record there and do all that as well.
Yeah, I was saying to you, earlier that I really love. I love Glasshouse. It's also got a history to it, and where it is in the countryside.
Yeah.
It's really nice to rehearse, and then just step outside and you're just surrounded by fields.
Yeah.
And it's very Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I've been rehearsing there since I was like 19, and someone said, when Nick said, come out to my studio, and we were like, whoa. So I've always been there. So it's really nice to just be there now.
Yeah.
Then we'll see where it goes, see what the future holds with it. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the recording that you do in the studio, do you mix it as well?
Yeah, I have done. I always say to people, I think I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I mean, as far as production goes, I'm really good at saying things like I'm really good. I really enjoy, and I'm good at getting the performance and getting it in the box, if you like.
Yeah.
And keeping a session really moving and keeping it, because sometimes you can have the energy sucked out of a session with just like, if you keep it moving and keep everyone like good and get it all in there and really get a good feel and get a good vibe and concentrate on the vibe of what's going down
and being positive all the time.
Yeah, and working hard.
Yeah.
Like when working with Ian Davenport and watching how he works at Courtyard, he's relentless. He's doing stuff all the time. The band might be having a cup of tea or a sandwich or something. He's working his arse off.
Yeah.
And he's doing stuff when they don't even notice. He's fixing this or doing that, and then he's setting up the mic for the next thing, and it's always about that. Let's keep moving, keep the session moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Burning through it, and it's like a really long day, from 10 in the morning till into the small hours.
Yeah. If I'm recording here, I will skip meals, but I won't realise it, because you'll probably find the same when you're recording. You're just going, and also making it sound good for the client as they go, so they get a bit of an idea of what it's actually going to sound like.
Yeah, so you get excited as you're going, so you're keeping that excitement and that momentum.
Yeah, because I've definitely remember when I go into the studio, and that hasn't been the case. You're working with NJ, maybe a bit grumpy, and he's not that bothered or whatever. Yeah, and you're recording it, and because they're not making it sound nice as they go, you can be a bit like, oh, it doesn't sound like good, because you need to add a little bit of magic as you go, mix it a little bit, so
sometimes just to know what's going on a bit as well.
Yeah.
Although I do, so I like all that front end stuff, getting it all in there and talking about the arrangements, and if they want to talk about arrangements, if they don't, then I just leave them to it. But really focusing on that energy and getting a good takes and making sure everything's nice as well. That actually is a good take, and sometimes saying you might redo that, and someone's saying, I thought that was right. You go, yeah, it was all right, but getting the best out of everyone. Yeah.
And how do you approach it? Do you try and get them doing it as live as possible, or
it depends what people want to do? Yeah. If it's that thing, it's the same. If it's a trashy live song that can speed up and slow down, then let's do that. And if it's not, if it's something that is like really groove based, let's click it and maybe build it. If that's the way the band wants to do it. I think it's sort of dictated by the song, quite a lot, and the band, what they feel comfortable doing.
I'm always trying to capture the rhythm section playing together whenever possible, because even if you then overdub everything again, then you've got the vibe to begin with,
and you can hear it, can't you? What's going on? Yeah. Don't build it like just a drum track to this click. I get people playing together, and then you can take stuff off and redo stuff. Yeah. Because humans are they're good at interacting in that way, aren't they? Yeah. It's quite exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that to try and capture the vibe as much as possible is important, and most guitarists want to go back and do the solo 50 times. Yeah. So you have to allow for that as well. But I love that thing of a band. I love that thing where you could solo each individual instrument and it kind of sounds like wonky, and then you put it all together, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa! It sounds like the band. It sounds like a band. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever listened to like Motown stems or something, right? Of like just the bassist or James Jamerson from Motown or whoever playing. You listen to it on its own, it's like, God, it sounds really wonky and terrible, and then you put it with the band and it's like magic. I think that's what I love. I think we've got a lot of modern production has got away from that, maybe a little bit too much. That idea of the vibe.
I think I'm not a producer. Like I said, I can get it in there nicely with a feel, and then someone else more often than not mixes it, especially with our stuff. I always mix it and send it to someone else and say, can you make it like that but much better? And they go, and they always do. But I do think you're right. I think sometimes people try and make it sanitized because it's easier to control that sanitized way of doing things, because you can look at it on the grid and you can be sure that it's right and that you like it. So it's like, instead of saying I like that because I like the way that feels, you can go, it's right, I like it because it's right.
You can see people looking rather than hearing.
And it takes you back to how we used to record on tape, on the big tape machines, and you come in after a take and you go, hey, that felt pretty good, and they go, yeah, I thought so, should we have a listen back? You go, yeah. And you're like, there's nothing to look at.
No.
You're just in the room, you're rolling a cigarette or whatever, you're listening and you're like, yeah, let's go with that. And they're like, yeah, let's go with that, that feels good.
That's what I loved about that. I don't know if you watched that Beatles documentary.
I did, I started watching it.
Yeah. I had COVID, I watched the whole thing when I was ill. And there's a lot of that. They're like, they might do like 30 takes, and then they'd all come back and have a little chat and just have a little listen and go, yeah, that's the one, that's cool. Yeah. But no one's looking at the screen going, is it in time?
You're a little bit off it here. Can you hear that? Can you hear that moving a bit?
If you can't hear it, I always say, if I'm not interested in things I can't hear.
Yeah. So when you do an edit, I always have to look away after I've done the edit and listen to the edit, and then, because if I'm just looking at the edit point, I'm like concentrating on that, and it's like, we should probably use our ears if we're doing music.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, I don't. There's lots of different people who are successful in all different methods,
and it also depends on the style of music, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
I heard this quote from Al Schmidt, who's a famous mixing engineer and recording engineer, and he was doing a Steely Dan record, and he happened to one of them pop their head in, and he happened to have switched the speakers off, but the levels were still going, and they thought that his way of mixing was he didn't listen. He just put the faders in the right place. It became like a mystery. It became like a thing, and when people go, do you know Al Schmidt? He mixes without the speakers switched on. He just levels. He knows where the faders need to go, sort of thing.
That's good.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. No, I think there's lots of different ways of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Nice. That's a nice place to end.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? I think that's my life.
Yeah. Well done. This is your life. Thanks, man. That was really fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to go down memory lane.
If people want to find out what you do, where can they look?
Where can they look? So the Glasshouse Studios is glasshousestudios.org, or is it glasshousestudios.oxford.org? Mm-hmm. You can find Bed on all the socials. Bed is B double D.
Yeah, 2 Ds.
Apparently it's Welsh for grave. So
that's quite dark. Did you know that when you did it?
No, I didn't. I used 2 Ds because I think 1 D was taken, and then I looked it up and it's like, it's Welsh for grave. That's even more goth.
Yeah,
that appeals to my goth side. So you can find us on the socials there. Yeah,
fantastic. Cool.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Nice one, man. That was really fun.
What time is it? Guys, we've been in here for hours. I'm sorry, Josh.
That's all right. No, it's really good. That's what podcasts are meant to be. Interesting.
Long form.
Well, I'm really into long form. I don't know if you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm really into long form podcasts.
Yeah.
Because I hate things that only are like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
When people just sound bites. I hate that shit. I like people with long conversations. People talk about interesting things. Which is kind of the idea of why I wanted to do this.
Well, good. Well, I hope it's vaguely interesting.
Thanks. No, it was really interesting. That's why I contacted you. I was like, Jamie's got, I know the bands you've been in, but Jamie's got some good stories.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got all the stories. Yeah, anyway, we'll do. You can do with what you want with it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That was really fun. I really need to wait.
Yeah, I need to go and get some lunch actually, because I think I'm gonna go and play guitar this afternoon before I pick the kids up.
Oh, lovely. You got 2 kids?
Yeah, 10 and 7. Actually, the 10-year-old takes himself to and from school now.
Oh wow.
I know it's a bit weird actually. Do you want me to press? No, you pause this.
fun little piano. That you see, it used to be a pianola.
Yeah. Bloody like warm tone.
Yeah, I really like it.
Otherwise, it sounds really nice and warm.